Very few tram systems undergo such a radical change as the system of Liberec and Jablonec Nisou. Most tram systems stick to the gauge they chose from the very beginning, but at some point, being the odd one out in your country is not the most practical. So this tram system underwent a Herculean effort to bring itself in line with the rest, while taking the necessary steps to prepare this fantastic system for the future. Let's check it out. The story of trams in Liberec started in 1894, when the city council gave its approval to construct an electric tram line. It opened in 1897, which made Liberec the second city in the Czech Republic to adopt this technology, only trailing the capital, Prague, by a year. Liberec constructed its tram system with a meter gauge, a decision that has been reversed recently. Only a few years after Liberec opened its tram system, Jablonec also joined the tram game. Both systems were popular and grew quickly before the First World War. However, it is important to note that both systems were isolated from each other. Between the World Wars, little development occurred, which mostly had to do with the turmoil of the breakup of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the arrival of the economic crisis of 1929. After the conclusion of the Second World War, both cities found themselves once again in another setting. By far the biggest development was that both cities finally received a tram connection to each other. This interurban line opened in 1955. For Jablonec, this was sadly at the end of the lifetime for its own tram network, which closed in 1965. In the rest of the 60s, 70s and 80s, the largest development was the introduction of the trams of the legendary Czech company Czechia Tatra. The tram system of Liberec and Jablonec did not receive the Tatra T1, as a result of having a meter gauge, but it did receive the Tatra T2 and T3. However, it started showing the need for Liberec and Jablonec to start thinking about rebuilding the tram system into standard gauge, at 1435 mm wide. Besides Bratislava's tram system, Liberec and Jablonec's tram system was the only system to operate a meter gauge in former Czechoslovakia. In 1998, a big part of the inner-city tram section in Liberec was converted and could now support both gauges. The conversion continued in the 2000s, with the culmination coming in the 2020s, when the interurban line to Jablonec Nisou was modernized and converted to standard gauge. In 2021, the final meter gauge tram ran in regular traffic in Liberec and Jablonec, and in 2024, the renewed and converted line to Jablonec reopened. Which brings us to the network of today. This is the tram network of Liberec and Jablonec. It is around 20 kilometers long and has a gauge of 1435 mm, better known as standard gauge. There are still sections where the meter gauge tracks are visible, but it is no longer in use since the track to Jablonec has been regauged. The trams use 600-volt DC overhead wires. There's one depot, which interestingly has its own rail connection to the Czech railway network. Let's now take a look at the lines. We start with line 2, which runs between Dolní Haníchov and Lidové Sady Zoo. Line 2 is around 6 kilometers long. It runs exclusively during weekdays until 6 p.m, at an interval varying between 12 and 20 minutes. Unlike line 2, line 3 runs every day of the week. It is basically a longer version of line 2, and runs between Horní Haníchov and Lidové Sady Zoo. Line 3 runs every 12 to 20 minutes during weekdays, while maintains an interval of 10 minutes during the weekend. Line 5 runs between Viaduct and Vratislavice nad Nisou Vyhybna. It only runs a few times per day during peak hours, and interestingly has its most regular 30-minute interval on Sunday morning. Line 11 is perhaps the most well-known line of the network. It is the interurban tram line that connects the city of Jablonec nad Nisou to Liberec. It starts at Viaduct in Liberec and terminates at the loop Tiršovy Sady in Jablonec nad Nisou. The route is mostly recognizable due to the forested and hilly environment it passes through, making it one of the most scenic tram routes out there. Most of Line 11 is single track, with a couple of passing loops at stops along the route. Line 11 typically has an interval of 15 minutes during the day, which drops down to every 30 minutes in the evenings and on Sunday mornings. The beating heart of the tram system is the stop Vugnerova, which is the location where all the tram lines meet and where buses also have a major stop or terminus. It is also possible for trams to terminate here, as there is a turning loop available. This video about the tram system of Liberec and Jablonec is part of an already 55 episode long series of videos of transport systems. I would love to show you many more in the future. Therefore, it would be really helpful if you like my video and subscribe to my channel. Let's now take a look at the tram fleet. Liberec and Jablonec have quite an interesting fleet, but not in the sense of diversity. Instead, this tram fleet is unique in the fact that it almost completely consists of the Czech pride, the Tatra T3. Liberec and Jablonec are so fond of them that they take over second-hand trams from other cities, most recently from Olomouc. The Tatra T3 originally did not have a low floor and would therefore typically not be the only tram type in the city, so that accessibility would be guaranteed in other intervals. However, in Liberec and Jablonec they have a large number of Tatra T3s with a partial low floor, ensuring accessibility. However, the Tatra T3 is not the only type in Liberec and Jablonec. There is one tram of the type Evo 2, made by Prago IMAX. This is a prototype, and its livery is dedicated to the history of the trams in Liberec and Jablonec. I sadly did not see it once I was in Liberec and Jablonec, as the tram is currently out of service. Let's now take a look at the ridership. The estimate of the usage of the tram system of Liberec and Jablonec is around 13.9 million passengers per year, according to the annual report of 2024. The reason why it is an estimate is that the model is used to calculate the number of passengers who benefit from free public transport, due to their age or other reasons. Broken down to a daily average, the tram system of Liberec and Jablonec transports around 36,600 passengers per day. This is quite a good figure for two relatively small cities. Let's now take a look at the future of this tram system. Liberec and Jablonec have a few plans for expanding the tram system, but to be fairly honest, I doubt we will see them materialize anytime soon. And we will likely have to wait for another 5 years until any of these expansions will be there, if at all. If there's one network expansion that has been discussed a lot over the years, it would be an extension of the interurban line farther into Jablonec, which would bring it closer to the city center and provide better connections to the rest of the public transport system of Jablonec. Another likely network expansion is a tram connection to the Roglice district in Liberec. This more densely inhabited district is now slightly removed from the tram system, while it could really benefit from such a connection. Initially, the plan was to let the tracks branch off from the tracks to Jablonec and Nisou, but the most recent planning foresees tracks to meet with the rest of the system at Rybníček, where tracks to the depot are also connected to the network. And that's it for this video about the tram system of Liberec and Jablonec. Click here to watch my video about the tram system of Ostrava. And as always, thank you for watching.